Hello and welcome to Unit 2, Day 4. Today we are working on strengthening our argumentation through counter-argument and refutation. You will notice in today's agenda that we are starting with this instructional video where you're going to take notes on vocab. You're also going to engage in some discussion through the Microsoft Teams chat function. And then you're going to be completing this independent practice, which is leveled out steps 1 through 4, before wrapping up and finishing with the mastery check. So there is a lot packed into our agenda, but the reason that we have so many independent steps is just so we can break it down and kind of problem solve those steps together. So today our objective focus is that students will be able to refute, rebut, or concede opposing arguments and contradictory evidence, which we had referenced in previous videos. And our skills, AP English language skills that we're focusing on are effectively entering into an ongoing conversation about a subject means engaging the positions that have already been considered and argued about. So again, we're not just going into this and developing a stance without thinking about context and without thinking about multiple lenses and perspectives. And then our second AP English skills focus is that writers enhance their credibility when they refute, rebut, or concede opposing arguments and contradictory evidence. So before we get started, we do have some new vocab, and I ask that you take notes and you pause the video as you need to in order to make sure your notes are accurate. The first vocab word that we have today is counter-argument. You might have heard this word before, but a counter-argument is an argument or set of reasons put forward to oppose an idea. It's also considering the possible arguments that are against your thesis statement. Refutation, also a noun. The verb form is to refute, and it's to use evidence to show someone is wrong about something. It shows why the other side is wrong with specific evidence. So if we refute someone else's argument, we are showing why their argument is wrong. Rebuttal, also a noun, and the verb rebut. So to rebut something is the verb form. And that's when you're presenting your side of an issue. You may not be proving someone else wrong, but you're presenting your perspective and why it is relevant with a rebuttal. So maybe you're denying something or invalidating something. And then the last one is concession, which is the noun form. So if I concede, that's the verb form, to concede. That's where you acknowledge other points of view of an issue. So maybe it gives you credibility because it shows you understand the complexity of an issue. So for example, if I am arguing that we should colonize Mars, and that is because Earth is becoming more unlivable every day, I might concede that yes, this is going to cost a lot of money, but I am going to make the argument that the money is worth it because it will save human life. So concede is acknowledge a part of an opposing argument is true. So in the Microsoft Teams chat, I would like for you to answer this question. And please write in complete sentences and make sure all answers are appropriate. Why might a writer enhance his or her credibility if they refute, rebut, or concede opposing arguments? Why would this boost a writer's credibility? Take 2 minutes, you can pause the video, and answer this question in the chat. All right, so why are we specifically studying how to counter-argue or how to refute an opposing argument? This is from the 2018 Chief Reader Report. Which is after your essays are scored by AP English teachers at the end of the year. They kind of draft up a report of what they've seen and what they notice. And so the highest scoring essays presented nuanced positions that address the complexities of the issue. They use the sources. So in the synthesis essay, you can use sources. They provide you with sources. In the argument essay, they do not. But they use the sources to issue their knowledge of history and their power of observation in a more balanced and well-reasoned conversation. So in other words, these essays looked at the multiple perspectives that we've been talking about. And then aside from just the AP exam itself in preparation for that, we're doing this for empowerment. So students learn to understand and participate in conversations about important and complex issues in the world. So this gives us a voice in the conversation, and we kind of better know how to navigate our own stance, and taking in like other perspectives and things like that. So we have seen this argument essay rubric before when we took a look at student samples. And today our lesson kind of focuses on how do we obtain that sophistication point by addressing 1 and 2 in the decision rules and scoring notes. So as you know, you earn the sophistication point when you demonstrate a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation and argumentation. So you're really using really specific examples, and you're using elements of rhetoric. So for example, your knowledge of your audience, or your tone to really convince your audience that you're right. But we're focusing on 1 and 2. So when you craft a nuanced argument by consistently identifying, exploring complexities or tensions, students who earn the sophistication point often don't just say, here we should colonize Mars because X, Y, and Z. They are also pulling in other perspectives and counter arguing those perspectives, or conceding certain truths or limitations and still supporting their main argument. To articulating the implications or limitations of an argument, either the student's argument or an argument related to the prompt, by situating it within a broader context. They also are looking at those lenses that we talked about, like political lenses, environmental lenses, historical lenses, and kind of situating their argument within those broader contexts. So as I said earlier, today's lesson focuses on one argument prompt from 2010, and we're going to be practicing counter-argument, refutation, rebuttal, concession, and tensions within the argument prompt. We already took these notes, so this is just a quick review of what those vocab words were and what they mean. So here is an example of those words. So for example, counter-argument, considering the possible arguments against your thesis; refutation, to use evidence to show someone is wrong about something; rebuttal, presenting your side of an issue. So here's my thesis. This is just a sample. And the prompt was like, are dogs or cats better? Quick disclaimer, I actually don't have dogs or cats. I'm more of a plant lady myself, but for this example, I'm arguing that dogs make better companions. So for my thesis, dogs make better companions and can help us, there's a typo there, can help us live healthier than cats can. All right, so if that's my thesis, I am also going to consider some of the arguments that are being made against this thesis and consider refuting those those arguments and supplying a concession. So my refutation, which is to use evidence to show someone is wrong about something. I know that a possible counter argument could be that cat owners are healthier than dog owners. So my refutation here is, although both dogs and cats can help protect against allergies, children who own dogs have fewer infections and are prescribed antibiotics less often than children who don't. And again, I'm citing the source I took that from because I don't know that much about cats and dogs, so I did have to do some research here. And then dog owners are more physically active than people who do not own a dog, including cat owners. So notice I am already considering the possible counter arguments, and I'm refuting those counter arguments ahead of time so I can plan to incorporate that in my essay. A rebuttal is when you present your side of an issue. So a possible counter argument could be cats are better companions than dogs, because notice I'm making the statement that dogs are better companions than cats. Well, here is my rebuttal. Dogs are better companions because no one is more excited about you being there than a dog. Plus, they are great company on long walks. While there are some cats that take walks, overall they don't tend to like being on a leash. And so notice, like, I'm counter-arguing that with a specific example that, well, actually, dogs can go with you outside of the home and want to go with you outside of the home, whereas cats are more of like home pets. Concession, that's where I acknowledge other points of view in an issue. I acknowledge that maybe there is some truth to a counter-argument. So possible counter-argument. Cats are easier to take care of than dogs. Well, if a cat has a litter box and plenty of food, they can probably take care of themselves for days. So I'm acknowledging this. Dogs, however, require more attention. Still, dogs are worth the investment because they make such great pets. So notice I'm conceding that yes, cats are probably easier as far as maintenance goes, and yet dogs are worth that extra investment because they make those better companions. So that is how you would think about refutation, rebuttal, and concession. All right, so, and if you'll notice, like, there are multiple shades of gray here. It wasn't just this is better, this is not. We did consider some of the perspectives, and we acknowledge that some of the perspectives are true, but we pointed our audience in a direction of like, this is why my argument is still beneficial. It is important that we continue to understand the multiple perspectives. And as I said earlier, we can think of these these lenses as stakeholders. So for example, if we're thinking about the political lens, how might politicians view this issue, or how might what events in history are similar to this issue, and what effects of that historical event did we see happen, and why might that support our argument, or why might we need to actually counter argue that, and so keeping that in mind. So we're going to start with step 1. We're going to read this prompt. This is the sample prompt that we're using today for today's independent practice. The first Buy Nothing Day, a dream on which people are urged to purchase no goods, was organized in Canada in 1992 as a way to increase awareness of excessive consumerism. A Buy Nothing Day has been held yearly since then in many nations. An online article, Buy Nothing Day 2006 press release, urged worldwide acceptance of taking a 24-hour consumer detox as part of the 14th annual Buy Nothing Day in order to expose the environmental and ethical consequences of overconsumption. Write an essay that argues your position on the establishment of an annual Buy Nothing Day. Before we move on, you might already have some opinions on this. You might be thinking, well, in today's context with how our economy is right now, businesses are going bankrupt. We're all having to stay home. People can't go shopping. They can't go out and purchase items as easily. You might have like a pretty staunch stance on this. Before you immediately jump to your stance, I would also encourage you to jot that down, and then to also consider step 2, which is identifying the stakeholders and the lenses, so we can consider those multiple perspectives. So what I would like for you to do is you can pause the video. You're going to take time to highlight and jot down important lenses. So any from this list, and there are more, it's just cut off by the PowerPoint, that we should consider when we're guarding the issue of a Buy Nothing Day. Should we have a holiday that encourages people to not buy anything? Should we not have that holiday? So you can include others not on the list that you might think are important too. So there's a lot here, but if you think of another lens that we didn't include, maybe a psychological lens, please include that. All right, so you should have paused the video. I already have some of these highlighted, which you'll notice I've highlighted politics, economics, society and culture, environment, and there are. All right, so sorry about that. I fixed the screen. So you'll notice I have highlighted in red each of the lenses that I feel like pertain to this prompt. So when I'm thinking about consumerism and I'm thinking about whether we should have a Buy Nothing Day, I am also thinking about, okay, well, politics is definitely involved here. Economics is involved. This could impact our society, our culture, our environment, ethics. There might be some ethical implications. Small businesses could be impacted, so they're definitely stakeholders. Socioeconomic status probably matters when I'm thinking about this and the perspectives that I hold, and corporations. So there's more. Maybe you have different ones highlighted, and that is fine. But within each lens, I would like for you to take a couple minutes and write down at least 2 potential perspectives on the issue. So you can go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and jot down some of those ideas. All right, so I'm going to show you a teacher example, so you might want to check your work. You can also feel free to copy this teacher example under the political lens, just as a model that you can use for your other perspectives under the other lenses. But you'll notice, so when I think about should we have a buy nothing day to increase awareness of excessive consumerism, so this idea that our society continues and continues to just buy. I can even put myself in this situation. I am constantly ordering things off Amazon. As we were expecting a new baby, it's just like, we'll just buy these diapers here, we'll get this here. And so Amazon packages arrive pretty frequently. So our society built around this idea of consumerism. So should we have a buy nothing day or should we not? Is kind of what the prompt is asking. But you could also have a more nuanced argument too around like how we should go about implementing this. But here is some perspectives under the political lens. So the impact on the stock market could anger voters. So for example, if we were to say, let's have a buy nothing day, certain voters are heavily tied up in the stock market, so that could anger them. So that's a perspective to have. This would be more up to a state government than the federal government, and it is not enforceable. So keeping that perspective in mind. And the last perspective I have written down is lending support of this may illustrate to voters that politicians do care about the environment. And so notice these are three perspectives. You might have better ones. And to be honest, I would encourage you to keep what you have and also add these perspectives just to be thinking more about the different perspectives that people hold. All right, now you're going to try. So you're going to pick two of the lenses below in this circled green area and write two or more potential perspectives regarding the issue of each. So go ahead and pause the video. Pick two of the lenses, or you can pick more than two, and provide more perspectives. All right, step 3 in our independent practice is for you to consider the multiple perspectives and find the tension that exists between the perspectives. So in other words, where is there disagreement? So for example, when I listed my perspectives under politics, I noticed that some of my perspectives actually were against each other. So for example, you might have one political perspective that supports the idea of the buy nothing day, and you might have another political perspective that does not support the idea. So that's where you can decide, okay, well, what do I believe? And am I going to have to counter argue or concede or refute this opposing argument? So for example, anti-buy nothing day political perspective. So I do not think there should be a buy nothing day because the impact that this buy nothing day will have on the stock market and how that can anger voters and anger people's businesses. Maybe I'm tying in another perspective right now. But this pro, which was also under buy nothing day, says, well, lending support of this holiday, so incorporating a buy nothing day, may illustrate to voters that politicians care about the environment and that they're trying to solve this issue of overconsumption and pollution with boxes and packaging and things like that. So notice these two are at odds. So now I need to decide, what is my stance? And am I going to counter argue? Am I going to concede? Or am I going to refute that opposing argument? How will I incorporate it into my essay? Which brings us to step 4. What is your stance? So I want you to write a thesis statement that demonstrates your stance on the prompts below. Remember to consider the multiple perspectives in your claim. And so you have a list. You have plenty. So some of this list now becomes like, oh, this is going to be my evidence. Like, this is why I believe this, and here's my evidence why it's going to be beneficial or why it's not going to be beneficial. If you need a sentence stem, consider the following. And I've posted these here, like, although blank, an annual buy nothing day should be established because, or although blank, an annual buy nothing day should not be established because. And so notice those are two different stances, and you're kind of considering an opposing argument here. Okay, now that you've finished the independent practice, here are two quick examples you can use to check your work. Although it may be a short-term loss for businesses, so we're conceding that this is true, it could actually impact small businesses negatively. An annual buy nothing day should be established worldwide to help consumers focus on what's important in life and to minimize the impact of consumerism on the environment. So they have beautiful reasoning here, and they're conceding that there is a truth to the opposing side. Second one, although it may raise awareness of environmental issues, an annual Buy Nothing Day should not be established because of its negative impact on businesses and the workers who depend on them. So this student is like, no, the positives do not outweigh the negatives. I'm going to concede that, yeah, it could raise awareness of the environmental issues we face, but it's going to do more harm than good. And so notice that both of these students have different points of view, and yet they're acknowledging the different perspectives and sticking to a stance. So today you're going to complete a mastery check similar to how I walked you through those steps of the independent practice, but it's with a different argument prompt. So below is an argument prompt. I'm going to read it to you in just a second. I want you to read and analyze the prompt, consider the stakeholders or the lenses involved, and the multiple perspectives held for these stakeholders. Identify your stance and construct a thesis statement. Here's the prompt. One of the first-year student orientation initiatives at a local university is to collect incoming students' cell phones and keep them for 48 hours. The purpose of the initiative is to give students an opportunity to integrate into their new school culture and make friends on campus. Carefully consider the effects of this initiative and the extent to which they might support, complicate, or contradict its intended goals. So is this a beneficial practice or is it not? Use appropriate specific evidence to illustrate and develop your position on the advisability of the 48-hour cell phone ban. All right, so in your mastery check, you'll notice it says choose at least 3 stakeholders, so 3 of these lenses, at least, you can do more. Identify the multiple perspectives of these stakeholders, similar to what we practice in the independent practice. If you need to add a different lens, feel free to add that. And then at the bottom, you're developing your stance, your reason, and you are writing down potential counter arguments to your reasoning so that you can practice refuting those or practice conceding or rebutting. All right, and once you're finished, make sure you submit. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teacher.